Who gon' take it there? 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 Electricity, 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 electricity. You know what's in the air. 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 It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility.
All right, so Theo Vaughn had Vince Vaughn on his podcast, Two Vaughns, and this appearance has been going a little bit viral, getting some attention in the headlines because Vince Vaughn said some things about late night shows. They talked a little bit about polarization, kind of touched on the polarized nature of comedy at the moment and like comedy podcasters and the shots that have gone back and forth about that. And this is an interesting cross-section because Vince Vaughn has been in comedy for a long time. Not sure how much actual stand-up he's done. I'm sure a little, but he's been successful in movies for a long time. So he's coming from a little bit of an old Hollywood perspective. Not that old, but you know, the previous generation when the machine was still churning and things have changed a lot. So not only is he commenting on sort of the changing landscape from a little bit of an older guy perspective, but it's also this critique of like an older version of Hollywood that is coming through in what he's saying here. And Theo Vaughn's kind of going along with that. And so that's why I think this has caught a lot of headlines because specifically he's taking aim at like the late night shows and stuff like that. And Vince Vaughn is just a guy who's been a little bit more of a target of the old guard media when it comes to Hollywood and that sort of thing, because he's been on this right-leaning side for a while. And I think he visited Trump recently, probably voted for him multiple times at this point, and has made comments like this a few times in the public eye. So here is him and Theo Vaughn talking about political polarization and Hollywood.
And so then stand-up kind of went through the same thing where it started to form into like this stand-up group or this group or a comic is this. And I thought, Jesus, it's the same shit where it starts to get too self-important. And I think ultimately comedy is a big tent. You can go real cerebral or you can be physical. It doesn't matter. It's just there's nothing that you know, prestigious or like a stamp of approval about it.
Yeah, I agree. It's gotten to that place recently. There's been like kind of like infighting. I don't know if it's
like
infighting.
Rappers. It's like rappers now,
Yeah, it is
right?
kind of.
It's so silly.
But everybody's afraid to kill each other.
It's weird, right? It's just so stupid.
So I'm just saying we either we need a Tupac and Biggie we need somebody.
It's got to go real bad to get good.
Yeah.
Or it's just got to stop.
Or it's
silly.
But it is silly.
It's silly, bro.
Well, a lot of it got political too, I think. Politics came into stuff. I think has happened a lot over the past few years with people like attaching themselves, like heavily attaching themselves to politics.
Which is part of the job because you're going to talk about current events.
Right, but to attach yourself
But you don't want to become part of a group and feel like you're a champion for one ideology. You want to make fun of everybody.
You know, Hollywood is pretty much overly kind of a liberal place.
Yeah.
And so you would have...
But not really.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's more like we're smart and got it figured out. And if you don't agree...
Then you're
an idiot. Yeah,
so that's true.
It's more elitist. Not liberal in the way that we think, where it's like, hey, it's all groovy.
Right. Yeah, it's not liberal like a hippie with a joint.
No, man, no.
Maybe
that's pursuit of happiness. That's cool. Whatever makes you happy, bro. Right, that's cool.
Maybe it was at one point, though, I think.
I don't know.
But it's definitely got more of an elitist take, like this is our way or the highway.
I think it's changing now. Within individuals and friends, and we could always disagree and we always joke with each other. People my age, I disagree, agree, and we'd change our minds, we'd laugh, we'd joke. But there was definitely a culture that if you didn't agree with these ideas, you were looked at as bad. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think Hollywood got more political. I don't know if it got more political.
No, they got rewarded for it. Yeah, they started to come out there and do it, and I don't even know how much everyone even is informed on everything.
Yeah.
But they really like to get out there and do it.
Oh, yeah. But it's also wild how those people will speak on one thing, but there'll be another topic that's way bigger.
And they're hypocrites, too, a lot of times. Like anybody is.
Oh, for sure, dude. I totally
you'll be like, I feel strong about this, but it's a strange thing when you start going like, you know better than someone.
Yeah.
The podcasts have gotten so much more popular with less production, less writers, less staff. And the reason why
we have two people working here and both of them are hungover. One guy has shingles.
But the place is clean. I like that. You keep a clean place.
Thank you. Yeah, we did a vacuum.
But But yeah, because people want authenticity.
Yeah.
And I think that the talk shows, to a large part, became really agenda based.
Yeah.
They were going to evangelical people to what they thought. You know what I mean? And so people just rejected it because it didn't feel authentic. It felt like they had an agenda. It stopped being funny, and it started feeling like I was in fucking a class I didn't want to take.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Oh, for sure.
I'm getting
dude.
scolded. 100%.
Yeah.
100%. And so I think that's the phenomenon isn't what they say. They always blame technology. But the reality is it's the approach. And I think people are going to tune into a podcast more so because they want to feel like people are having a real conversation. It's interesting to them. But if you look at what happened to the talk shows and why their ratings are low, it's got only to do with the fact of what you just said, which is they all became the same show.
Yeah.
And they all became so about their politics and who's good and who's bad. And it's like, imagine sitting next to someone like that on a fucking plane.
Oh, but you never felt ostracized in by Hollywood at all, or no?
I got along with people for the most, and always was,
Always had a great career.
Try to be honest who I am. But yeah, there's times you felt like it would have been easier. It's almost like a career move.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? But I was always the other way too. Like, I'm not jumping on 100% this or this because I have opinions on both sides. There's shit I don't agree with at all.
Yeah.
And then there's shit I don't agree with at all.
I don't see how people could choose a side completely.
Bro, it's so crazy.
Because also, once you're on a side, you're on a side. Fuck that. I want to be able to have the freedom
Flexibility.
to go. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, I agree with this over here. I agree with this over there. It is what it is.
Yeah.
But we never cared about it so much. It wasn't our defining conversations about how I like somebody or life. We weren't 23 sitting around talking about fucking taxes.
Yeah.
But I think as it started to encroach on us, for me, I started to go a little bit back here because nobody wants to be told what to do.
Or feel like everything you do has to be through a certain lens.
Or worrying about if people think you're kind or not. Like, you're not going to tell me.
And especially when everybody's pretending a lot of times, because I would have friends acting one way, but then like kind of speaking another way sometimes.
Well, those are the people that are so focused on how they're coming off.
Yeah. Yeah, we've started to make it seem like the delusional isn't delusional sometimes.
Say that again.
Like, yeah, something's delusional, but if we act like it isn't over and over and we would like pretend,
normalize it.
Yes. It's almost like you said, like the boiling water like gets a degree higher 1 degree at a time,
Yeah, saying that like as they change the laws a little bit at a time, you kind of wake up and you go, this has gone way further but it happens so slowly that you're like, if they would have done this at once, I would have gotten out.
All right, yeah. So a lot of threads here. Obviously, like I said, everybody's freaking out about this thing that he said about late night shows. They became too political. Blah, blah, blah. I think that's kind of a misread of the situation because it's more so about, I think, the format becoming stale due to the consolidation of media, and politics does come into play there. However, Vince Vaughn is coming from this kind of vaguely right-wing conservative, but not wanting to say it's conservative type of angle, and that's always the angle that he's come from in talking about this stuff, and that's what he's gesturing at in terms of this internal Hollywood battle of, well, it's not okay to say certain things from the other side, to voice certain opinions, etc., and that led to essentially a cultural backlash and also those forms of media becoming less popular. So it's easy to say that for guys like this, and they're sort of having their moment, although he's a little bit late on this. Even this critique feels a few years old at this point, and it's kind of more of a victory lap when they say things like this, because if Donald Trump won on any basis, if anything was delivered to the base of people that elected him, it was like the end of woke, right? Or at least a major blow against PC culture. And so they're talking about this old version of Hollywood that was like more liberal, but not really liberal, because it's more about scolding you and it's more about saying, we know and you don't know, we know better than you. Now, the thing about analyzing it that way is that it leaves something missing, because if you were just saying that they're liberal and that's annoying, people who simplify it more so to saying something like that are being a little bit more honest about their critique here. Although there is a deeper problem that leads to the dynamic being different than just people in Hollywood believe in liberal ideals and so conservatives are alienated by that. It's not quite that simple either. What it really is the people that control the companies in old Hollywood being, 10, 20 years ago, that put out all the movies. So the handful of companies that control all the intellectual property, those are the entities that really do the censoring and decide on an editorial level what can and can't be said within the art. So then lower in the hierarchy, you have all these creative people who are pushing to get ideas out there. You got executives who are pushing back on them because they are trying to please the owner of the company. But ultimately, the liberal politics of Hollywood is kind of a veneer on what is really a larger capitalist structure. And that capitalist structure does have some liberal qualities and tend to be helmed by people who lean more on the liberal side. But ultimately, the top-down practice of Hollywood comes from a capitalist ideal and the fact that there's an inherent dishonesty to the liberal messaging because it ultimately is serving the end of maximizing the profits of that company that controls the output. So it's more about appealing to a certain audience, expanding the base of audience that you appeal to, and being seen as a liberal, generous, public-friendly company. And so that is a valid thing to critique. But there's a reason Vince Vaughn isn't making that particular critique, and he kind of lets it slip a little bit because he says, you know, when we were younger, when we were in our 20s, we weren't talking so much about these political things. We weren't just sitting around discussing taxes, which is an interesting thing to be the first thing that he says. What he's saying there is that we weren't discussing how much taxation comes into play when you're making these large movies, how much of large sums of money that actors make or whatever ends up getting taxed. And if you are making a lot of money, it becomes a thing that you're talking about more and more, especially if you're annoyed about the fact that you're paying a lot of taxes. And the politics that he's gesturing at, that he is frustrated about other people caring about, tends to be the other kind of politics that's either more socially focused or, God forbid, something that has to do with taxing the rich to, you know, address certain social problems. So a guy like Vince Vaughn is not super comfortable with like anti-capitalist talk or tax the rich talk because he feels a little bit more comfortable on the conservative libertarian side of that argument. Hey, I don't want so much of my money to be taxed and blah, blah, blah. But he also doesn't like this idea of being told what to do. He kind of quickly changes what he says to being told what to do. We weren't talking about taxes. I mean, come on, nobody likes being told what to do. So, you know, he was thinking there about a certain amount of his money going towards the government and is saying that he doesn't like being told what to do. He doesn't like the top-down nature of Hollywood. But truthfully, all he is really critiquing about it is any semblance of liberalism. So at this point, the cultural conversation has moved on from that to the point where liberal as a policy indicator is kind of outdated. And at least when it comes to the base, you have people wanting something that pushes further than that in terms of rhetoric. And that is going to be much to the chagrin of guys like this, because it's going to be more in the like socialist direction, or, you know, talking about funding programs and how to collect more tax money from the rich and use it responsibly. So that's where the base is headed. And that's where more of the conversation on the other side, the pushback side, whether it's Democratic Party politics or something that supersedes that, outside of that, that's where the conversation is going to be at. And while it may be able to shed some of that sort of fake veneer of liberal politics, which people on the left hate too, by the way. But the reason people on the left hate it is because it is a mask for a capitalist structure that's really just about exploitation. So that's a critique that only people who see it from a left-wing perspective are able to make. And that's why it gets kind of mushy as they get more and more into it, because they're trying to critique the top-down structure of it and how, because of that structure, because owners of these companies that control the IP can control what the talent says at certain levels and impose certain unspoken rules on what you are and aren't allowed to say, especially at certain parts of your career where you don't have a lot of leverage. Javier Bardem was just talking about this recently in terms of people being censored over speech on Gaza. So that is a real example of something that, again, cuts against the capitalism, the colonialism, the empire of America, and also people's financial interests within Hollywood. And so that's why it's dangerous to say. There are cases probably where people are marginalized or feel marginalized because they said something slightly racist or something that came off racist. or maybe even something that was just on the more innocuous side of conservative-leaning politics. But truthfully, the substance of that critique doesn't cut at the heart of anything that's happening in Hollywood. It may, at best, be the sort of other side response to this very surface level conversation that often happens in liberal circles. So if that's your only interest, is to just make a contradictory argument, especially one that is not aimed at any type of like systemic change, which is clear that people want, then you shouldn't be surprised to feel alienated and ostracized, because you're not even really trying to present solutions. You're just being a dick. And the people in Hollywood that don't want that are fake liberals and want to continue to be rich and want to continue to benefit from that inequality, those are what are considered to be the elites and all that, and ultimately need to be torn down. But Vince Vaughn unfortunately fits into that category here, because he's going on this podcast. I've seen a lot of these older comedians, actors do this, where they're feeling comfortable in this space now. They're like, oh, okay, this space is well established, where you can go and kind of push back on the myopic Hollywood woke culture, whatever, and say things like this. I saw a little bit of this on the Joe Rogan show with like some of the actors that went on there. Seems like they've got a lot of thoughts on this sort of thing, and they view these type of podcasts as a place where they can let some of this stuff out finally, that they've been cooking for a while, that this conversation's been going on, but they only just now are feeling more comfortable saying it. And there's this angle here about hypocrisy. They talk about hypocrisy, and this is an endless conversation. Nobody cares about hypocrisy anymore. It's an impossible point to make from either side. And it's easy, the easy thing to do when talking about Theo Vaughn or any of these guys, and this point has been well made, is to say like, you know, you supported this, you got us into this, blah, blah, blah. And I do think it should stick to them. So it bears repeating. But what I want is for the conversation to evolve. I want the conversation around these topics to evolve in this country. I want us to move on to a new place. And what I'm hearing in this conversation is not that. This is a few steps behind, if anything. So I think eventually this type of commentary will fall flat, but in place of class consciousness in this type of commentary, because they're doing anything but pointing at class as the reason and the driving force behind these mechanisms that have enclosed the Creative Commons, enclosed Hollywood, maybe atomized the content space so that there's more people making content. But guess what? All of that infrastructure is owned by the tech guys, and they can change the policy surrounding that in the flick of a wrist. And if Congress passes a law about age restriction and verifying ID and stuff like that, then all of these companies are going to change their policy very fast, and that is going to shape the media landscape. So it's the nature of the world that we live in. And in lieu of that, in lieu of being able to criticize that, they're going to talk more about cultural issues and try to point at people in the culture that are responsible for, I don't know, waste of money or the excesses of liberalism. And that's what reactionary ideology needs in order to continue its stream of propaganda. It has gotten the right wing very far through a long stretch of an era where they had zero credibility culturally, to now where these reactionary narratives are much more at the forefront of culture. And so the only way out of that is for class consciousness to be a powerful enough force that it looms over conversations like this in an unignorable way. And the fact that guys like this are able to talk about this to a working class audience and not feel an unspoken pressure to address class, to address the problem of capitalism and capitalist consolidation, never with the language of ownership and talking about how much ownership the working class people have in society, let alone the work they do every day. And so that type of conversation will be the evolution from the type of populism that these idiots thought was uniting people around Trump to something that can actually make a change, because it has to be something that enfranchises people. And Republicans promise in politics, the only thing they're ever capable of doing is disenfranchising people. And so that's why even hinting that you kind of like some of their policies on taxes or whatever makes people look at you like you might be kind of a piece of shit, because this is what it gets you. But even still, all these years later, we don't hear nothing about it. But Trump has implied that the Iranian leaders have tried to kill him multiple times and didn't succeed in it. And it seems like he was hinting at something that had happened.